Even before official campaigning began on Monday, Putin had already made his first move. This wasn't the first time has Putin used the often real threat of terrorism to draw Russian voters towards him. But never before has he so publicly engaged a US president in the endeavor, and perhaps never before could he have found such a willing partner. The following day, Putin's spokesman gushed back, "I once again wanted to remind that the perfect example of such cooperation is the recent exchange of information between the special services, which really helped to save many lives." What he didn't say was why Putin seems so keen on making Trump part of his election campaign. That sounded alarm bells in Washington, where former U.S. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said Vladimir Putin knows how to handle an asset, and that's what he's doing with the president. Putin first ran for the president in 2000, shortly after Moscow had been shaken by a number of bombs thought to be the work of Chechen separatists. Putin's tough talk of retaliation, famously saying he would rub them out in the outhouse, helped him ride public fears into the Kremlin. He later denied allegations that head stage managed the situation by having his henchmen plant the bombs. But his crackdown in Chechnya that followed left no doubt he was in power to protect Russia and Russians. Barring a 4-year apparent job swap with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev between 2008 and 2012, he has held the post ever since. And even during the seat shuffle to get around the Constitution's 2 consecutive term limitation on the presidency, few Russians doubted that he really held all the power. While no one expects him to lose in 2018, turnout and votes will still be a matter of pride. Not just because this may be his final term, but because it could impact his ability to keep his hands on the levers of power once this term runs out in 2024. Putin is off to a grand start. He has walked this stage before, playing the part of being protector of the people for so long he owns it, and so does the rest of the Kremlin's cast. As Moscow was announcing Putin's call to Trump, Russia's ambassador to Washington was hosting a concert in D.C. celebrating 210 years of Russian-American diplomacy. Thousands of miles from Moscow, he was in tune with the opening lines of Putin's new election campaign, delivering a similar message to an audience of diplomats. It's absolutely important to overcome existing bilateral differences and find ways of integrating mutual interests. Trump's man in Moscow, the recently appointed shrewd ambassador John Huntsman, might have seen this coming. On Friday, in a post to the 45.1k followers on the U.S. Moscow Embassy Twitter account, he said, "I think we will expect to see further improvements in the U.S.-Russia relationship." Turns out he was right. Come Sunday, we learned that the CIA had successfully helped take down a Russian ISIS terror cell late on Thursday. But while this goodwill and cooperation seems timely for Trump as he attempts to beat back accusations from Clapper and others that he is being duped, the reality is that there may be gains in it for Putin too. Russia's elections are a performance within a performance. Putin plays the people's savior from terrorism, in an election that has the hallmarks of a charade. He is the only realistic candidate in a field thinned out by government controls. So while Putin wants voters to turn out in force for him come elections on March 18, he has a far more fractious and potentially dangerous constituency on his mind: Russia's oligarchs, who are the real force behind his power. Just last week, the world got a glimpse of how even they are when a power play spilled out into rare public view. Russia's second most powerful man, Igor Second, boss of state-owned energy company Rosneft, clashed with Economic Development Minister Alexei Lyukayev over a gas deal and in a sting operation worthy of a mafia boss. Second set the minister up for a fall, trapping him a $2 million cash bribe. Lyukayev denies the charge, claiming that he has been framed. While few in Russia were surprised to hear about government corruption, they were shocked at the severity of the Olyukayev's sentence: 8 years hard labor. Second refused to turn up to give evidence in court. The subtext to it all is that real power in Russia comes through money. No amount of electioneering will win over the super-rich power brokers. What will make them happy, however, is an end to U.S. sanctions, or at the very least no additional ones that impact their incomes. So while Putin is dressing his election stage with the usual props ahead of what may be his last round of campaigning, he appears also to be artfully performing 2 acts in parallel, one at home and one for a U.S. audience. He is having Trump take a walk-on part in the Russia performance, backing him, on a theme that is also close to Trump's heart. Meanwhile, what the U.S. audience sees is Putin cast as a worthwhile and willing U.S. ally to combat global terrorism. As Putin's ambassador in Washington told the concertgoers about the two presidents, their contacts confirm that our countries need each other to define a joint program of work on strengthening international security. Come mid-February, when the U.S. decides on a new raft of sanctions against Russia, Putin will no doubt be hoping that his tune will be resonating in the minds of U.S. lawmakers. Because if Putin is to have an encore in power beyond 2024, he'll need Russia's oligarchs to help stage the performance.